You were never the favorite, Ava. You were just reliable. The one we knew would say yes, even when we gave you nothing back. That's not love. It's utility. Those were my mother Margaret's words, spoken while standing in a brightly lit kitchen right next to a perfectly set table for 10. With no place card for me, no chairs for my children. If you've ever been made to feel like a shadow in your own family, only remembered when they needed something, then you'll understand why I never went back. The windshield wipers brushed away lazy flakes of snow as I sat parked outside my parents' house, fingers clenched around the steering wheel. The kids were chattering in the back seat. Noah humming some song from school, Sophie rehearsing what she planned to say to Grandma. They were so excited, so hopeful. And I was about to walk them straight into a storm. Last Thanksgiving, I hadn't come. A single text from Mom, maybe you should learn from Vanessa, was enough to shut the door for me. I still had the screenshot saved in a folder labeled Reasons. Logan called 2 weeks ago, sounding sincere. She's different now, Ava. Dad, too. Vanessa's not coming this year. Please, just give them a chance. I wanted to believe him. Not for them, but for Noah and Sophie. They deserved a family, or at least the illusion of one. Okay, everybody ready? I asked, turning in my seat. Noah gave a thumbs up, and Sophie held out the glittery card she made. A drawing of our family sitting around a table, all smiling. My heart twisted. I grabbed the Glenlivet I'd bought and opened the car door. The walkway was already shoveled. The porch spotless. Fake wreaths, lanterns with LED candles, and a welcome mat that said, Gather. It was the kind of house people pointed to and said, Wow, must be nice. And from the outside it was. Logan opened the door before I knocked. You made it. He looked genuinely relieved. I smiled. Small but real. We're here. The warmth hit me immediately. Roasted turkey, cinnamon, wine. I could hear laughter, voices layered on top of each other. A cheer erupted from the living room. The Bears must have scored. Everything looked normal. But then we stepped into the dining room. The table was set for 10. 10 chairs, 10 plates, 10 name cards written in Mom's cursive. None for me, none for Noah, none for Sophie. Mom, I said, keeping my voice light. Margaret walked in, wearing pearls and a cashmere sweater. Ava, you're early. She looked at the kids. Oh, you brought them. I blinked. Of course I did. It's Thanksgiving. She exchanged a glance with Charles, who was carving the turkey like it was a courtroom cross-examination. We weren't expecting you, he said without looking up. Logan said you might come, and you didn't RSVP. I texted you on Tuesday. We thought that was tentative, Margaret added quickly. Anyway, the table's full. You can eat in the kitchen if you want, or come back after we're done. Sophie looked up at me, her hand tightening around the card. Noah's eyes were fixed on the table, on the mountain of food he wouldn't be allowed to touch. The laughter from the other room faded. No one else had noticed us yet. Or maybe they had and chose to pretend otherwise. I took a breath. I brought Glenlivet, and Sophie made this card for you. Margaret didn't move. Charles finally looked up, his expression carved from stone. This isn't about gifts, Ava. It's about boundaries. And family, I said. He gave a tight nod. Exactly. I bent down and whispered to Sophie. It's okay, baby. She nodded, blinking fast. Noah whispered, Did we do something wrong? My throat tightened. No, sweetheart. You didn't. I stood straighter. We're not guests here. We're family. Or at least I thought we were. The silence that followed was deeper than anything I'd heard all day. Logan looked like he wanted to vanish. Margaret folded her arms. Charles went back to the turkey. I turned toward the door, the bottle of Glenlivet still in my hand. Margaret muttered behind me, Well, if you choose to leave... I stopped. Put the bottle down gently on the entryway table. Then I turned halfway, not fully, just enough to speak over my shoulder. Number you chose this. I'm just respecting it. And then we walked out into the snow. They didn't just uninvite me from dinner. They uninvited me from the illusion that I still mattered to them. The snow was falling heavier now. Flakes clung to the windshield like tiny white lies, too delicate to hold weight, but impossible to ignore. The wipers swept them away again and again, but they always came back. Sophie's voice broke the silence. Mom? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide, her voice uncertain. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa like us? Noah turned to look at her, then at me. He didn't ask. He already knew. I gripped the wheel tighter, blinking fast. The words swam in my throat like fish in cold water. I wanted to shield them from this. But how do you protect your kids from a truth that grows in your bones? Some people don't know how to treat family, I said quietly. But that's their problem, not yours. No one spoke after that. Just the hum of the heater and the crunch of tires on slushy pavement. When we got home, the porch light was on. Daniel opened the door before we reached it. He looked at me, then the kids. One glance was enough. Upstairs, toothbrushes, pajamas, he said gently. I'll be up in 10. The kids didn't argue. They rarely did. Not when Daniel used that voice. The one that said, I'm here, I've got you. I stood there a second longer, coat still on, arms stiff at my sides. Daniel pulled me in. No questions, just warmth. It was only when I smelled the cinnamon on his sweater that I realized how badly I'd been bracing for battle. They didn't even have chairs for them, I whispered. He pulled back. What? They set 10 places. I brought Glenlivet. Sophie made a card. Charles said they weren't expecting us. Margaret told me we could eat in the kitchen, or come back later. Daniel's jaw clenched. They said that in front of the kids? I nodded. He didn't say anything else. Just stood there, which somehow made it worse. He was angry, but he wouldn't feed mine. He let it sit, settle, solidify. Later that night, after the kids had finally drifted to sleep and the house was quiet except for the ticking of the hallway clock, I curled up in the corner of our bedroom, my laptop open, the soft light of the desk lamp cutting a small circle in the dark. I logged into the bank. The numbers stared back. For the past 11 months, I'd been sending $800 every month to Walker Mortgage family account. No memo line, no thank you notes, not even a thumbs up emoji. The last time I brought it up, Margaret brushed it aside with, "That's what families do." Apparently, setting chairs was not what families did. I clicked on the recurring payment. Pause. Then, cancel. Confirmation flashed. Transfer canceled successfully. I opened a new email. To Margaret Walker, Charles Walker. Subject: Final transfer. Hi. As of tonight, I've ended all financial contributions toward the mortgage. Vanessa just got a promotion. You'll be fine. This concludes my support. I hovered for a second, then hit send. 3 minutes later, my phone lit up. MOM calling. I stared at it. Let it ring. It lit up again. MOM. Then again. Same name, same ringtone. On the fourth call, I opened my settings and blocked the number. I sat back in the chair, silence buzzing in my ears. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like sealing a letter and dropping it into a mailbox, knowing whatever happens next isn't mine to carry anymore. 3 days later, I was folding laundry when Logan's name popped up. Logan. Vanessa got fired. It's bad. Real bad. ChatGPT Jan Noi. Ho Noi Toi Jang Fan Ung Tai Kwa. Then they realized I was their emergency plan, and their plan just walked away. I hadn't opened Logan's texts for 2 days. After the message about Vanessa, I told myself it wasn't my mess. Let them clean it up for once. Let them face consequences without reaching into my pockets. But on December 4th, just after 10 at night, the doorbell rang. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You expecting someone? I shook my head. The kids were asleep. The neighborhood was quiet. The snow outside muffled every sound, except the doorbell again. It was Logan. He looked worse than usual, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well. His coat was zipped up to his chin, but he still shivered when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" he asked. Daniel stepped back, letting him in. I said nothing, just turned and walked toward my home office. If he had something to say, he'd have to say it on my turf now. Logan followed, hesitating like he was stepping into a courtroom, not a carpeted room with a warm lamp and 2 coffee mugs still on the desk from earlier. "She got fired for fraud," he said. I looked up. She faked credentials, claimed she had certifications she didn't. The company flagged inconsistencies during a routine audit. I said nothing. Logan took off his coat, draped it over the chair, then sat across from me. And that's not the worst of it. I leaned back. "Remember that $2,400 you sent in August? To help with the mortgage?" I nodded. Logan swallowed. "It never went to the mortgage." I blinked slowly. "It went to Vanessa, for a down payment on her new car." He didn't say anything else. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow hadn't started yet, but the air had that brittle stillness that comes before it. "She told me she needed it," he continued. "Mom said they'd shift things around, that it was just temporary." I turned around. "They lied to me. Again." He nodded slowly. I didn't know at the time. But later, I found this. He took out his phone and pulled up a screenshot of a bank transfer. Date, August 3rd, from Margaret Walker to Vanessa Walker. The amount, $2,400. Memo, vehicle advance. I stared at it. Not because it surprised me, but because of how unsurprised I felt. "They knew," I said quietly. "They all knew, and they let me keep believing I was helping." Logan's eyes dropped. "I should have said something." "You should have done a lot of things," I replied, too tired for anger. Silence. Then my phone vibrated. Voicemail. From Margaret. I didn't listen, just opened the app, tapped on the latest message, and deleted it. Logan looked startled. "You're not going to—" "No." She said, "Dad's not doing well." "I'm not doing well either," I said, turning back to my desk. "No one ever called for that." He opened his mouth, then shut it. We didn't speak for another full minute. Daniel appeared in the doorway, didn't say a word, just looked at me, then at Logan. A silent check-in. I gave him a nod. I was fine. Not okay, but fine. Logan stood, grabbed his coat. "If anything changes, it won't." He left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the ceiling, arms crossed, waiting for the ache to dull. At exactly midnight, my phone buzzed again. "Logan, I think Dad's having a heart issue. Mom won't call 911. She wants you." They called me cold, but I wasn't the one who left a child crying at a dinner table. The smell of cinnamon and nutmeg floated through the house as I pulled the first tray of pumpkin muffins from the oven. Outside, the wind scraped frost along the windows, but in the kitchen, it was warm. Soft jazz playing low, Sophie humming as she colored at the table, and Noah concentrating on cutting out shapes from brown construction paper. They were making a poster titled Our Thanksgiving, in bubble letters, rimmed with little stick figures holding hands. There were 7 people in the drawing. Me, Daniel, Sophie, Noah, Logan, Aunt Becca from Colorado, and a smiling golden retriever. No grandparents. No Vanessa. My phone buzzed for the 4th time that morning. I didn't need to check. I already knew the caller. "Want me to toss it in the freezer?" Daniel joked gently, sipping his coffee by the window. "I've already blocked Mom's number twice. She just finds another phone," I said, setting the muffins on a rack. He nodded, then asked, "So, are you really done?" "I mean, done. Done." I folded a dish towel slowly, pressing the seams flat with my thumb. They've always been loud, manipulative. And I always bent. This time I'm just not. Daniel walked over, leaned his arms on the counter beside me. So you're not answering anything? No. Even if your dad is actually sick? I looked at him. Then he needs a doctor, not the daughter he ignored for 15 years unless it involved money or Vanessa's mess. He didn't argue. He never did when I used that tone. Calm, final. Another voicemail landed. I let it play through speaker as I washed the muffin pan. Margaret's voice was raw, low, feigning fragility. Ava, your father isn't doing well. Vanessa, she's having such a hard time. We need you. Please, come home. Be the bigger person. I snorted. I was. For years. Didn't work out too well for me. Sophie held up her drawing. Mom, look. You're wearing a crown in mine. I knelt beside her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Is that a turkey wearing sunglasses next to me? She nodded proudly. The front door rattled slightly as the wind pushed against it. Daniel scrolled on his iPad, then looked over. You're really planning to host your own next year? I already emailed 3 caterers this morning, I said, and looked up tent rentals. If people want a real Thanksgiving, I'll show them how it's done. He smiled, not amused, but proud. I walked to my office, stared out at the backyard still covered in thin snow. Then I picked up my phone, opened the messaging app, and hit record. Logan, I said, if he's sick, he needs a doctor, not a daughter he only remembers when Vanessa falls apart. Tell Mom to stop calling me. I'm not coming. I hit send, then deleted the message thread entirely. When I turned back to the kitchen, Sophie and Noah were sticking their Thanksgiving poster to the fridge with flower-shaped magnets. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years, until the knock came. 3 slow knocks, deliberate. Daniel glanced up. I held out a hand to stop him, then walked to the door myself. Through the frosted glass panel, I could barely make out the shape of someone standing outside. Shoulders slumped, scarf too loose, hair unkempt. I opened the door. It was Vanessa, and she looked nothing like the sister who used to sneer from a throne of compliments. Vanessa always wears success like a badge. Now she looked like someone who finally read the fine print of her own lies. She stood in the doorway for a full second before stepping in, the chill trailing after her like regret that hadn't found a place to land. Her coat was wrinkled, her hair unbrushed, her eyes carrying the bruises of too many sleepless nights and the weight of something deeper than shame. I didn't offer her tea. I didn't offer a seat. 5 minutes, I said. She nodded, clutching her purse like it might dissolve if she let go. The living room was sunlit, a stark contrast to the shadow she dragged with her. Frost traced delicate webs on the lower corners of the window, and from the hallway, Daniel stood half-hidden, arms crossed, saying nothing. I wouldn't be here if I had another option, she said finally. I know, I said. She glanced at the couch but didn't sit. Mom said, you wouldn't let family suffer. I tilted my head. Family wouldn't steal $75,000 of my kindness and serve it back to me cold. Her lips twitched. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is that I believed you every time. That I didn't question where the money went or why I was the only one ever offering help. I was paying off a mortgage while you were buying SUVs. She crossed her arms. I wasn't trying to... Lie? I cut in. Falsify degrees? Let others take the fall when the audit happened? She blinked. I stepped closer. You lied to your boss, your clients, your friends. But the worst part? You lied to me and you thought I'd never notice. Or worse, you thought I'd notice and still show up. Vanessa's voice cracked. I never thought you'd cut us off. I took a breath, slow. You never thought I had a line, did you? Silence. She shifted on her feet. You're just being vengeful. No, I said. I'm just finally awake. The clock ticked loud in the background. The muffins Sophie made were still on the counter behind me, untouched. The smell of cinnamon had faded, or maybe I'd stopped noticing. "You know what hurts?" I said quietly. "Not the money, not even the lies. It's that you looked me in the eye every Christmas, every birthday, and acted like I should be grateful just to be allowed into the room." Vanessa's chin trembled. I didn't wait for her to cry. I didn't need the performance. I turned, walked to the door, and opened it wide. A gust of cold air rushed in. I didn't flinch. "Go," I said. "Not because I hate you, but because you still think I owe you." She stood frozen for a moment as if waiting for a different line, a softened version, an old Ava. That woman was gone. Vanessa finally moved. Her boots thudded on the porch, slow and heavy. As she reached the steps, a car pulled up. Silver Toyota. Logan stepped out, paused. His eyes darted between me, standing in the open doorway, and Vanessa, walking away without a word. He said nothing, just watched as she passed him. Head down, hands buried in her pockets. And then he looked at me. I didn't nod. I didn't wave. I just closed the door. Last year, I stood at the doorway of a home that pretended I didn't exist. This year, I opened mine. And nobody needed an invitation. The snow fell softer this time. No longer the harsh curtain it had been 12 months ago, but a quiet accent to something whole. Warm light spilled from every window of our home, newly renovated, with garlands of amber leaves draped across the staircase and candlelight flickering on the dining table. 10 chairs. Everyone filled. Daniel's sister, Camille, brought her famous cranberry chutney. My coworker, Janine, brought laughter and homemade apple cider. Logan sat at the far end of the table, hand resting on his girlfriend's, a man who no longer walked on eggshells but on steady ground. And Noah and Sophie? They floated between seats like little servers, grinning with pride as they handed out the place cards they'd made weeks ago, each guest's name drawn in crayon, ringed with fall leaves and tiny turkeys. "Mom," Sophie whispered as she passed me a napkin, "this is the best Thanksgiving ever." I smiled. "That's because you helped build it." In the kitchen, Daniel stirred gravy while humming to himself. He caught my eye from across the counter and winked. Everything in this house bore fingerprints of change. The walls were now a soft sage green. The floors, refinished with warm oak. The dining table? Custom made. I'd waited years for a space I didn't have to shrink in. This one, I built. After dessert was served and the last bite of pecan pie had been stolen from someone else's plate, Logan raised his glass. "To Ava," he said, "who gave me something I didn't know I needed. A home where respect lives." I felt my throat tighten, but the tears didn't come. I'd already cried them. Now, there was only clarity. Someone asked gently, "Do you think your parents will ever come around?" I looked at the flickering candles. "They made their choice," I said. So did I. Later, while the others chatted in the living room, I stepped into the kitchen to put away the last tray. My hand froze when I saw the serving dish. Oval, porcelain with a blue floral rim. The same one my mother used every Thanksgiving to serve her dry stuffing. I picked it up, held it for a second, then walked to the bin, lifted the lid, and dropped it in. Not with bitterness, just release. A knock at the door made me pause. I opened it to find the mail carrier, cheeks red from the wind. "Evening," he said, handing me a thin envelope. "Special delivery, postmarked from Evanston." I turned it over. My maiden name was written in familiar cursive. The return address was my childhood home. Inside, just one sentence was visible above the fold. We saw the photos. I didn't read the rest. Didn't need to. I slipped the letter into the junk drawer, turned off the porch light, and closed the door. Firmly. Gently. Back in the dining room, Sophie and Noah had started a new drawing. A big house with people inside, a table at the center, and hearts floating above it. I watched them for a moment, then walked over, pulling Daniel into a slow dance as music played low in the background. I didn't just survive. I rewrote the tradition. For years, Ava believed that loyalty meant endurance, that to be a good daughter, she had to shrink herself for the sake of peace. She paid mortgages in silence, endured condescension at family gatherings, and taught her children to smile through discomfort. But what no one told her was that enabling cruelty doesn't make it go away. It only teaches the cruel they can get away with it. The night they left her standing without a chair, physically and symbolically, wasn't a new wound. It was the final cut in 1,000 paper-thin betrayals. And this time, Ava didn't just walk away. She stepped out of the role they had written for her, burned the script, and rewrote the story. It wasn't rage that pushed her forward. It was revelation. The revelation that love without respect is manipulation. That silence in the face of cruelty is not peace. It's complicity. That healing does not begin with an apology, but with a decision. Enough. She didn't slam doors or shout names. Instead, she withdrew her presence, her resources, and, most devastatingly, her availability to be used. When they finally reached out, it was not with remorse, but with fear. Fear of losing what she provided, not who she was. And that, too, was its own form of clarity. Vanessa's fall from grace wasn't a tragedy. It was a reckoning. The mask cracked, and underneath was the very entitlement Ava had propped up for years with quiet sacrifice. But when Vanessa came begging, Ava didn't respond with cruelty. She offered something far more powerful. The truth. Unvarnished, unapologetic, and long overdue. In doing so, Ava taught her children a lesson no textbook could. That boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection. That dignity is not earned through approval, but maintained through self-respect. And that sometimes the most loving thing one can do is to walk away from those who refuse to see your worth unless it benefits them. Her final act wasn't vengeance. It was reconstruction. The Thanksgiving table she built a year later wasn't just wood and nails. It was a declaration. A space where her children didn't have to wonder why they weren't welcome. A room filled with people who showed up not out of obligation, but out of love. And when that envelope arrived, postmarked from a house she no longer called home, she didn't flinch. The words, "We saw the photos," could have meant anything. Regret, envy, a late attempt to pull her back in. But Ava no longer needed their recognition to feel whole. She had already found something more sacred than validation. Freedom. Freedom from emotional manipulation. Freedom from cycles disguised as tradition. Freedom to build something better. Not just for herself, but for every person who once felt invisible at a table meant to celebrate togetherness. In the end, it was not Ava who lost a family. It was a family who lost Ava. And that was the cost of never asking who made the table in the first place. If you've ever stood quietly at the edge of a room, waiting for someone to notice you, if you've ever spent years giving more than you had, just to earn a place that should have been yours all along, then maybe you understand. I didn't walk away out of anger. I walked away because I finally understood. Love should never be a transaction. Respect shouldn't be begged for. And a seat at the table isn't real if it disappears the moment you stop paying for it. So if you're sitting with that ache right now, if your name's been left off the list, if your worth has been measured in dollars or silence, this is your permission. To pause. To protect your peace. To choose yourself. Because healing doesn't always come wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes it comes in building your own table. One where everyone has a seat and no one ever has to wonder if they're welcome. You don't owe anyone your presence. Especially those who only notice its absence when the money stops. Sully. You weren't invited because you don't represent anything about this family. You're just a system error our mother didn't have the guts to abort. No one else, this was the slap from my sister Brielle, said to me right there in the golden ballroom while everyone else was raising their glasses to legacy and lineage. If anyone here has ever been erased from a life they helped build, stay, because this story is for you. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, thicker than it needed to be, wrapped in gold foil like a trophy I was never meant to win. The courier had smiled too widely, perhaps misreading the tension in my face for excitement. I waited until the door clicked shut before I turned it over. No name, just a seal. Inside, the card was pristine, ornate, and impersonal. You are cordially invited to the 60th anniversary gala at the Quinn Estate. Beneath that, a line etched in elegant script. Margaret Quinn and family. There it was again. That word. Family. A word that could be so whole in the right mouth and so cruel in the wrong one. 7 years ago, I left that house with a half-written recommendation and a shredded dream. I still remember the look on Brielle's face when she realized the email she'd sent pretending to be me had worked. And my mother? She didn't ask. She didn't want the answer. Now, here I was, seated in chambers above a gray, rain-drenched downtown Newark, the card in my hand and that chill in my chest that hadn't left since law school. I laid the envelope down beside the day's briefings. No name, no seat number, no intention for me to respond. Marcy tapped lightly on the glass door, stepping in with her usual grace and a clipboard hugged tight to her chest. Afternoon docket starts in 40. Do you want a coffee or... She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes dropped to the card, then to my hand, still resting